Update your firmware the easy way, with quick guides. Brought to you by Huntsman Optics. Today we're going to show you how to update your firmware using a PC or laptop with firmware downloaded from the Hikmicro website. If your device is new, or you're just upgrading to the latest available firmware for your thermal device, we have a few good tips to help you upgrade quickly and easily. Before we start, let's prepare your device for the firmware update. Power up your device. In the device menu, navigate to version and take note of your current firmware version. We note our current firmware version, so we can check that the new firmware has been successfully installed later on. Next, we navigate to network and turn off hotspot. We need to turn off the device's Wi-Fi hotspot so that we can connect your thermal device to your PC or laptop using a USB cable. And finally, please remove any batteries from your device, if your device has removable batteries. Next, we move on to downloading the new firmware. To do this, we need to use an internet-connected PC or laptop. Please navigate to the Hikmicro download page using the URL or QR code. In this example, we will download firmware for a Hikmicro Panther PQ50 thermal scope, and click on the Firmware tab. Then select Product Category, which is Outdoor. Product appearance in this example is a scope. And finally, the product series in this example is the Panther series. We look for and select the download for the PQ50. Once your download has completed, navigate to the file download location. Now we need to extract the compressed files from the file archive we have just downloaded. You may need to extract multiple compressed files. Please ensure you check all file folders for more compressed files. If you are unable to extract the file archive using Windows, you may have to use a third-party program such as WinZip or WinRAR. Once the archive has been unzipped, you should see a file called digicap.dav. This is the firmware file. Depending on your model of thermal device, you may have one or two firmware files. This is quite normal. Only one firmware update can be applied at a time, and they are not required to be updated in any particular order. The archive will also contain release notes, which contain specific information about the firmware update. It's recommended to read the release notes to see what bug fixes and improvements are contained in the new firmware. Now we move on to installing the firmware. With your device powered off, please attach the USB cable to your PC or laptop, then connect the cable to your thermal device. Now let's power up your device. Your computer should now recognize and discover the thermal device. You can now open up the thermal device's root directory. Please leave the root directory open. We will need this so we can copy the firmware from the computer. Now we need to go to the file folder on your computer that contains the digicap.dav file. The next step is to copy the firmware file from your computer to the thermal device's root directory. You can either copy and paste or drag and drop the digicap.dav file to the root directory of your thermal device. Once the firmware file has been successfully copied to the thermal device, power cycle your device by powering down your thermal device and then powering up your thermal device while it is connected to your computer. This will start the firmware flashing process. Your device will now search for and install the new firmware. It will display an upgrading message. It's quite normal for this process to take up to 15 minutes, so please be patient and most importantly, wait for the process to complete. If you have more than one firmware file, repeat this update process by copying any additional firmware files to your thermal device and run through the firmware installation process for each firmware file. Once you have successfully updated the firmware, you can confirm this by checking the current firmware version via the device menu. The current firmware version should differ from the version that we noted earlier. Congratulations! Your thermal device is now using the latest firmware. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Huntsman Optics YouTube channel and to follow Huntsman Optics Facebook page to see more quick guides for your Hikmicro thermal products.